Welcome to Interesting Choices, the podcast where we find interesting TVs, movie, and other media that make weird choices, and then we talk about them. I'm Sky.
I'm Kate.
Hi, Kate.
Hey, Sky.
So, what are we talking about this week?
We are going beyond the bounds of our previous format, and we've expanded into the world of video games.
Yeah, it was kind of the idea when we got started, like some real talk. We've done mostly movies because they're just more available and they're easier to consume than TV or games in a timely manner for review. So we will probably do more games in the future. It's going to be a while between episodes just because it's kind of a whole different bear.
It takes a lot more investment to go through a game. Like a movie is 2 hours. Mm-hmm. You're done. A TV show is either the pilot and then maybe another couple episodes. At minimum, you're looking at probably 1 or 2 hours investment. A video game, there are very few games that are under like 4 hours.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure there's ones that's worth talking about. I can't think of really short ones off the top of my head that could fill a 45-minute podcast.
But this one certainly can.
Oh, yeah. And then before we get started, I'd just like to give a real quick shout out to the Geek Remix YouTube channel, especially Stacy, for giving me permission to use their Let's Play for my research because I can't afford games right now. And I wanted to ask permission before I just used it and then pretended that I'd played it. So thanks to them. Check them out on YouTube. They do a lot of varied and interesting games, and they're just a really inclusive, cool channel. Geek Remix on YouTube.
Thanks, Geek Remix. So I actually played this game when it first came out because I saw Giant Bomb. They did a playthrough of the beginning of it, and I was immediately drawn in by the FMV nonsense of it. So let's just get out of the way. We are playing Contradiction, Spot the Liar.
Yeah, this game is pretty much entirely FMV, which is one of my favorite and really underutilized video game, I don't want to say gimmicks, but There was definitely a heyday for FMV, and it is not now.
No, it kind of made a little bit of a comeback in the early teens when people were like, actually, this is fun, and I like this. You see it with things like Her Story, and there were a couple FMV like fighting game things that were weird and terrible, and you could search on Steam. There are actually more FMV games now than there should be, and I'm here for it.
Yeah, they're also a lot better quality now than they used to be. I mean, this used to be only available on like the Panasonic 3DO or the Philips CDI or Sega CD, and the video was like the size of a postage stamp and it was super grainy, but you can actually get actual video for people that doesn't look terrible or sound horrible.
The video and audio quality has gotten a lot better. The acting has remained the same.
Oh, yeah. That is definitely a big draw because everybody's going for it in the most enthusiastic way possible.
So Contradiction, I played it on PC. It's available on Steam and other places, but I believe it's also available on the iPad.
Yeah, it's available on iOS, OS X, and Windows.
Yep. So if you are looking to play it and you don't have a gaming machine, but you do have an iOS device, you can definitely play it there because it does not require very much complicated movement. It's very accessible is what I'm trying to say, both in terms of availability, and it's basically a point and click. So you should be able to figure it out. No problem.
Yeah, it's an investigation of a possible murder.
Mm-hmm. Continuing on the sort of accessibility discussion, there are no consequences for failure. So it's kind of just a game that you uncover more and more of, but you will continue to progress. There's never a point where you make a wrong decision and you are just blocked from continuing, or it wastes your time. It wastes your time in other ways. Do not get me wrong, but you're never reset in your progress. So if you are new to playing this type of game, don't sweat it. I encourage you to just check it out and give it a try.
Yeah, there's no lose state. If you get something wrong, it just tells you it's wrong or it doesn't work. It doesn't kick you out. There's no live system. There's nothing like that. It is point and click adventure, murder mystery fun times in rural England.
Yep. I guess let's just start in on this discussion.
Yeah, so you play the investigator, detective inspector...
Frederick Jenks.
Jenks, which I thought was short for Jenkins until I reread it, and it's just Jenks.
Yeah, his name is just Frederick Jenks.
Yeah.
And he is a weird investigator with the police who is sent to a tiny rural village, Edenton, I believe,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
to investigate the mysterious death of a young woman named Kate Vine.
She drowned in the local lake. There was already investigation. This is sort of a follow-up investigation to tie up any loose ends because there's some suspicion that it may not have been a suicide as it was originally assumed.
And Jenks is there to clear it up. For some reason, he has to solve it all by midnight. I'm not entirely sure why.
That's the only really weird conceit to me, aside from the regular, police procedurals not really doing real police stuff. That's whatever. Just like solve it by midnight or the pizza's free, I guess.
He has to do this by going around, exploring the town, collecting evidence, interviewing witnesses, suspects, and then pointing out the contradictions in their testimony when he shows them evidence or new concepts and things.
Yeah, and as you talk to people, you'll get conflicting information, which you can then bring back to an interviewee and bring up and say, oh, but you said you didn't see this person in the last couple weeks, but you were there on Friday. And that's sort of the main mechanic and also where it gets the title from. You're trying to look for contradictions in testimony.
Unlike a game like L.A. Noire that relies on the sort of like facial animation and the body language, this game does not rely on acting ability of the people in it for the contradictions. They are purely factual contradictions in the testimony because all of these actors are trying their best, but they are like community theater level actors.
They're having so much fun, though. I mean, like, I can't hold it against them.
Oh, definitely.
Like, if it was just on acting, I'd be like, you're all liars, and I love it.
Yeah. So let's say you have a problem deciphering body language or facial cues. Do not worry about that because you will not need that. Again, you are only looking at the contradictions in two different statements, which you can then select and compare and contrast. So...
Yeah, and if you think, hey, that character's acting a little weird, don't worry, everybody's acting weird. They're just acting. Oh
boy, are they acting. And the most acting-ness of all of them is Inspector Jenks.
Our boy Jenks. Can we talk about his hat for like a minute?
Yes, I wanted to talk about his hat. It's so amazing.
Oh my God.
If this man walked into town and started investigating a mystery, I would not believe at all that he was with the police. He is a weirdo and he dresses like a weirdo and he has this like ridiculous hat that he wears even at night indoors.
All the time. And sure, he's probably self-conscious about his hair or whatever, but it's a look. I mean, he's one of those people that can pull off bald, so I don't know what he's got to be self-conscious about. But yeah, I was just going to say, he looks like a high school drama teacher in the off-season.
Yeah, he acts like it too. When he's investigating, he has this sort of like, I wish this were a video podcast.
Yeah.
Because his facial expressions are always like, he's super concerned about what you're talking about, and he kind of has like a little head tilt and pinched eyes, but only in the sense that he's not actually listening to you. He's just thinking about the best quote that he could bring up that would be relevant to the conversation.
Oh yeah, like I think several times he does the put the finger on the chin, duck lips, thinky move, like while he's listening. But especially when he's presenting new evidence to someone, it's like he's trying to surprise them with it. Like, if I did this, would that mean anything to you?
Yeah, Sky just held up the devil horns because that actually, if you look up this game on Google image search, that is one of the first things you will find because there's so much video of him holding up the horns on his hands. That's another thing I want to talk about is each time he talks to a character, he brings up a piece of evidence and he shows it to them and he asks them about it. A rational development team would have said, we are going to film you presenting the evidence once and reuse that for every single character. They do not do that. They refilm that scene every single time for every character, for every piece of evidence. It is so wild.
Yeah, for every background, because he interviews, I want to say like 6 different people, and they're in a different setting each time. So there's a scene of him presenting evidence, saying basically the same thing for every single thing, for every single person, for every single setting.
Yeah, and even things that are unnecessary, things that like don't have any bearing on anything. You'd be like, so what do you know about this object? And he'll hold up the object, and I cannot imagine how long it took them to film this, because wow.
I mean, I feel like there are at least a few of those that are just the first take they got, but it also seems like they got reactions for each piece of evidence from each person as well.
Apparently, it didn't take that long to shoot, I guess. It took 11 days, which for a game like this probably is longer than it should, but that's pretty zippy compared to the amount of video footage that you would get for like a feature-length movie.
Yeah, and this is a lot more footage than a feature-length movie.
Definitely. It's so wild. It's so wild.
I don't know. Do we want to get into spoilers? We kind of do that in each episode anyway, so...
Yeah, so heads up if you're going to play the game, spoilers.
Yeah, pause it now, go have some fun, come back and listen to us.
You know that. You've listened to this. Like, yeah. We're going to talk about all of the weird, hot nonsense, so it's fine. But this game goes some places.
Yeah, and it leaves a lot of loose threads that I'm kind of disappointed of, but it sounds like that the development team were aware of them, and if they do a sequel, which they kind of hope to, they're going to clear those up and then do a sequel, which sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, the very last shot of the game, which I'm kind of jumping the gun here, but the very last shot of the game is a setup for a sequel, and they fully intended for this franchise to go on for a while. It never did, or hasn't yet, but yeah, I'm looking forward to whatever they produce next.
I should say real quick, this was released in 2015 by Baggy Cat Games, designed and composed by Tom Follin, and also did a pretty successful Kickstarter, as I understand it.
Yeah, they started off with a target of about $3,000, and then they got a fair amount more than that, $4,000, which in Kickstarter terms is not that much, but it helped them get this out the door.
Yeah, I mean, it got more than they asked for. I would call that successful, but you know, what do I know?
Yeah, it's successful, but it's not a wild success, right? It's not a Double Fine or Bloodstained Ritual of the Night or any of those other sort of big name ones.
Yeah. Fullin's background is in video game soundtracks. He's done the soundtracks for a lot of games, this one included, of course. And for the longest time, for some reason, I thought he played Detective Jinx, but he does not.
I don't know much about the cast. I doubt that many of them had extensive careers outside of FMV games, but who knows? I
dug into it a little bit. They've all had some stuff. A few of them are on IMDb, but yeah, nothing huge. Mostly stuff within the UK, not necessarily local, but not really international either. But they really bring it for this game.
Yeah, I guess structurally, this game is broken up into hours. It starts at like 5 p.m., I think, and then goes all the way to midnight. So there are 7 chapters.
7 chapters, and then you advance the story by getting to uncovering certain contradictions.
Mm-hmm. All along the way, you are phoning back to your boss back in London, I believe.
Yeah, Scotland Yard.
The chief inspector, who is just sitting at his desk, I imagine just holding his head, being like, oh, this fucking Jenks. Why does he keep calling me this late at night with all of the most inane, mundane, pointless nonsense?
Well, it's really funny because in the first few, it sounds like he's there, he's, into it, he's invested. And for like the last couple, it sounds like he's at home watching a movie with the family and Jinx is interrupting.
Yeah, it's pretty hilarious, honestly.
It's like he literally says, oh, and it was just getting to the good bit too on one of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, you'll give an update, you'll summarize what happened in the chapter, and then the chief will sort of give you, maybe you should look at these things next, or that doesn't sound quite right, you should check that out. Sort of jumping off hints for the next section.
Yeah, it's interesting because I could have seen him being a sort of hint giver type character, but you actually need to call in to him every once in a while to advance the plot.
Yeah, the game will actually prompt you to do it.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the things I actually kind of appreciated about even just watching through, is it will let you know sometimes when you've done talking to someone if there are people you haven't talked to about some things. Like, it won't say specifically what, but it'll say you haven't talked to Emma about some things, or you haven't talked to Paul about whatever.
Yeah, that part is cool, but then towards the end of the game, when your evidence list is like 40 things long, and then you meet a new person, you're like, oh my God, I have to talk to them about all of these things that they are uninterested in, and I know they're uninterested in, but I need to do that in order to clear the queue enough that the hint system will tell me what actual thing I need to do.
I think there was one I saw where it was like, you haven't talked to Paul, Chris, Emma, or I can't even remember everyone's names, Simon, about several things. It's like,
yeah. At some point it breaks down and becomes useless, but when you are stumped, it's useful. Once you've exhausted all of your potential possibilities, sometimes it'll be like, there is a contradiction in Emma's testimony that you need to find.
Basically, the way it works is you'll have a subject or a piece of evidence that you'll select, and then there will be the responses that you've gotten, and you'll take one of them and you'll match it with something else they've said, and then the game will say, yes, these are contradictory, and then you'll go into a scene bringing that up with the character and then furthering the investigation.
It's pretty clever because it doesn't let you just brute force your way through. Each object spawns about 3 different statements, 3 or more statements. So to match up those statements against other ones, you have to find the right one. It's a fun way of doing a deductive game.
Yeah. I mean, they do have lying, but not as its own mechanic. It's basically just a part of the contradictions mechanic, which there's a bunch of times when someone sees something like, I've never seen that before. Like, if they say they haven't seen it, they haven't seen it. You're not like, are you sure you haven't seen it? Unless they say something that contradicts that.
Jenks does that a lot. He'll be like, how about these poppy seed pods? And the person will be like, I don't know what those are. He's like, are you sure you don't know what these are? And they'll be like, yes. And he's like, okay.
And then, like, especially with the poppy seeds, he keeps saying, do you know anyone that uses poppy seed pods? I'm like, you don't use them, you grow them, and then you use what they grow, but go on.
The writing is a little weird and awkward in places, but that's part of the charm.
Mm-hmm.
So since it is a game that you can experience non-linearly, like within the chapter, it doesn't really make sense for us to walk through it in the same way that we would a movie, because you can go talk to this person or this person first. But let's just hit on some more of the interesting story beats as we go along.
Yeah, I really wanted to mention the mask and the masks, and then also the effigies.
Sure. Yeah, let's talk about, let's talk about the setting. So it's this rural village that there are a cast of local characters, but there's also a big like manor house thing that is being rented out by this business seminar group called Atlas.
All caps.
Like most of the young people that you will run into are training at this business seminar or were ex-members, or pretty much everyone is related to Atlas somehow, including the person who died, Kate Vine.
Yeah, and at least a few of the people you talk to are deeply into it. A couple of them are only tangentially connected to it. Simon is deep into the program and was with Kate. Paul and Ryan are father and son, and they own and run Atlas. Emma is married to...
Emma is Simon's girlfriend / housemate. I'm not entirely sure.
Emma is Simon's girlfriend. I was thinking of Rebecca is Ryan's wife.
And then there is Lisa, the Atlas dropout, and then
James, the weirdo.
And those are pretty much all the characters in the game, barring the police.
There's a few people who just kind of show up for an incidental scene and then disappear forever.
Like fucking Kyle.
God damn it, Kyle.
But yeah, they're all connected somehow to Atlas, and because of that, they are connected to the Ryans.
Mm-hmm.
If those names sound familiar, you probably have either read some Ayn Rand or you've played BioShock.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll just get the mixed up names out now. Ayn Rand, Rand Paul, Paul Ryan. There we go.
Yep, there's Paul's, there's Ryan's, there's Atlas, and appropriately, they are the villains.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they're kind of the red herring villains. They are definitely the most evil people in this story.
I would have said in the past they are cartoonishly evil, but now reality has proven that those cartoons did not go far enough. So
yeah. They're delightfully subdued compared to reality.
They are the caricature of amoral business people.
Yeah, they have dived headfirst into Ayn Rand's determinist philosophy and dragged from its depths a motivational course they run people through.
Mm-hmm. And so everyone is very stoked to join this business course because they believe that it will teach them the skills that they need to be successful in the world of business. I don't know why they're running
I don't know why they're running it either. You later find out they had another program before that called Third Eye, which was accused of some rather shady doings. And then you further find out through the course of the story that they basically kind of brainwash people into being perfect employees. And then if you become the prime candidate or the best student, you get shipped off, not really shipped off, but you get a job at a high paying company. And then they get a kickback from that. So they're kind of like a recruitment agency for the Illuminati.
Yeah. If this was a different game, they would probably be selling some sort of modern day slave situation. But nope, it's just like, we're just really evil recruiters. And we're just here to headhunt people who will become your perfect
drones.
Not even drones, just like amoral executive psychopaths.
Yeah, and James kind of thinks there's some kind of deal with human trafficking going on, and he's almost right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, everything in this game that hints at something more sinister ends up being just like close, but in a more boring way.
Yeah, but it's really funny because there is something more sinister going on, but that's not what happened to Kate.
Yeah. The entire game, you are chasing the Ryans and Atlas through all of their different little secrets and like peeling apart this onion of their business course. Like at one point you walk in on them having a creepy circle meeting session where all of the attendees are wearing these paper masks and throwing little cloth dolls into a fire.
Yeah, which are the masks I mentioned earlier and the effigies. They just sort of wear them and they throw the effigies in the fire and they say it's a ceremony to get rid of your old self and become a new person. And it's really, really occulty.
It's both occult and occult.
Yes.
And Jenks walks in on this. He kind of like peeks in the window or in the door, and then he sees like occult shit going on. And then a rational person would be like, hey, I either need to leave or I need to barge in and stop whatever the fuck is going on because this is just like messed up. But he just kind of saunters into situation and is like, so what's going on here?
What's all this then?
I have some questions for you. Hello, I'm Jenks.
Yeah, and then everybody, I think there's like 6 or 8 people sitting around, like they're just having a fire in a wastebasket in a room.
Yeah, like in a ballroom in this like mansion.
Yeah, they all take off their masks and turn around and give him like the hideousest of stink eyes.
Everything's so blasé. Like Jenks, I can't tell if he's just super over things or if he's just too ignorant to understand what's going on most of the time.
I don't know. I think he's just like one of those people that can just roll with whatever.
Yeah.
And that's part of why they sent him out.
Like later on, he walks in on someone like being threatened with a knife and he's like, hello, what's going on here?
Like, he tells them to stop, but in like the least forceful way possible.
Yeah, they're just like, no, step off. You don't know what you're talking about, and you don't belong here. And he's like, well, I think I do belong here. That knife says I belong here. Instead of being like, hey, you're under arrest for trying to stab that woman in the neck with a knife.
Yeah, and there's another part where he comes upon two guys, and one of them's jamming a barbecue skewer right through his hand into a tree, and the other guy's yelling at him to keep pushing it in. It's like, maybe stop that? I don't know.
He is so passive, but in a like confrontationally passive way. It's such a bizarre acting choice that I love it.
Yeah. And it really works for like his character, which is the amazing thing about it.
Yeah, like my headcanon is that Jenks actually has no upper body strength and would not be able to handle himself in any sort of physical fight. So all he can do is just passive aggressively snark at people and point out their contradictions.
Oh, and then there was Kyle. He comes upon him at the lake carving something into a tree, and he tells him to knock it off. And Kyle's like, what are you going to do about it? And he's like, I'm the police. I'm going to fine you. And then Kyle's like, well, do I get to fine you if you do something I don't like? It's like, dude, come on.
He is so disrespected constantly and like has such little authority here. It's kind of a wonder he gets anything accomplished.
Yeah, it almost feels like he came out of like the Mr. Rogers course of the Columbo School of Investigating.
Yeah, he's half Columbo and half Inspector Clouseau or whatever. He just kind of bumbles into a lot of things.
Oh, and then Kyle, the thing he's carving into the tree is the rock horns. If you take your hand and you put your middle finger and your ring finger down and you have your pointer finger and your pinky finger and your thumb out, that's what he's carving into the tree.
Mm-hmm.
I half expected him to show up later carving like someone's caricature into a tree with like stink lines or something.
Kyle is such a non-character, but he always steals every scene that he's in because he is Ryan's devoted acolyte to the point where he will commit all sorts of crimes because he's so bought into the whole Atlas system of things, but you can never talk to him directly. He only appears in cutscenes and he just kind of sucks.
Yeah.
The people that you meet all have like interesting relationships with one another, like kind of random things. Like Simon, who is one of the business course's promising pupils,
yeah,
also has this like weird relationship with the burnout guy at the end of the lane, where he like makes some homebrew in exchange for salvia.
Yeah, there is a lot of drugs in this game.
There are. And like Jenks approaches everything like a man that has fallen out of the sky, not a police detective who should understand what most of these drugs are. He's like, have you ever heard of salvia divinorum, also called magic mint?
Oh, man. Yeah, he just finds a bag of it on the floor of a greenhouse, and he's just carrying it around with him and showing it off to people.
Yeah, and it doesn't really most of the drug stuff doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah, the biggest thing is something with one of the characters taking morphine for a back problem, and then there's a bunch of lying around that, but that ultimately doesn't lead to a whole lot with anyone else.
It basically lets you get contradictions later on where people are like, I don't use any drugs, but what about those drugs you use for your back? And then it's like, okay, maybe those drugs. Or like, well, I tried heroin with this lady in this mirror maze, but I'm also allergic to opioids.
Oh, God, the mirror maze. Jesus.
Yeah, there's a random mirror maze. Like, every choice in this game is so wild.
It's so bananas. Like, ignoring the fact that that's like an actual mirror maze, like they rented out this building in the fictional universe and for a leadership course built a mirror maze in a room, which before you go there, they don't say anything about it. So you ask Ryan about morphine tablets that he takes. He says it's for arthritis. His dad says it's for his back pain that he pulled his back last year. And you realize there's a contradiction. Something comes up where someone had stolen a laptop, and he mentioned that he kept his morphine tablets in a storeroom, and you're like, but someone stole something from there. And he's like, no, not that storeroom, a different storeroom. And you go to investigate it, and it's a goddamn mirror maze on the second floor.
There are so many things like that where it's like, oh, I'm just going to investigate this mundane thing. And then, oops, I've discovered all this weird evidence. Someone's like, was Kate drunk at the course? And they're like, no, but this other guy was drunk and he sucked and then he committed suicide. But I thought you didn't let people drink on the course. Well, we don't. Do you mind if I check your kitchen for alcohol? Sure, go ahead.
And then there's just a TV with a stack of DVDs sitting on the counter in the kitchen.
Yeah, and then like in a drawer, there's just like a random DVD of crimes.
Yeah, and it looks like it's someone's, old porn files that they made, because it's like the original labels scratched out with black Sharpie, and then someone just wrote XXX on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's a CD. Like, maybe it's a CD rewritable.
Yeah.
Maybe. Over and over and over, Jenks kind of just like stumbles into more evidence that he does not deserve to get.
It's almost like his superpower is that he's controlled by a player character.
Yep. So one of the interesting things about this game is when you control Jenks and you go from location to location, you kind of like click waypoints on a map, or you can click the exit on the screen. Depending on the direction that you're coming from, it will be a different angle of the video of him like walking to a place. It's so unnecessary.
It's a nice touch, though. My only real complaint with that is, especially if you're walking down by the lake and the paths, it's pretty easy to get turned around because they're all named similar things, unless you get close to the Atlas house.
And there are a couple times where you just need to randomly walk into a location in order to trigger a cutscene that will allow you to advance the plot. That's not amazing, because it just means that you're randomly walking around a lot, and then each time you do, it's accompanied by him walking video. And some of the by far worst day to night effects that I've ever seen.
Yeah, some real blue filter level stuff.
Just deep, deep navy blue over everything. And I get it, but also, come on.
Yeah. I mean, I really appreciate the effort, and I understand that it's hard to film at night, especially with the budget that they had. Mm-hmm. So you kind of had to do that, or just pretend that it's night in the middle of the day. So I'm glad they actually tried with it.
Considering half of this game takes place at night, unnecessarily, honestly.
Yeah, because you keep calling the chief at like 11 and 12. Like, is he not going to bed? What day is this?
Basically, after 7 p.m., it gets darker and darker. And then like all of the outdoor scenes have this like horrible blue wash over them. But very few things actually happen that require nighttime. So they could have just bumped the timeline up to like 11 a.m. start, then just filmed everything during the day.
I don't know. I think it's maybe thematic. You have to solve it by midnight.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a couple of the outdoor cutscenes are helped be a little creepier by the blue filter. But yeah. I mean, there's a lot of video game logic stuff that you could really pick apart. Like, everyone stays at the same location pretty much the whole time. And they don't have a problem with you leaving and then coming back and then leaving and then coming back and then reciting a litany of things that you would like questions about. Like, you can pick apart that stuff all day, but that's just part of the game.
I like to think that it's because they're all rural townsfolk and they're like, this is the most entertaining thing that's happened in a decade. So we're just going to hang out and see what this weird inspector does.
Yeah.
So we haven't really talked about Rebecca at all.
Right.
It's actually kind of important. She is
Ryan's wife.
Ryan's wife, Rebecca, runs the local pub.
Mm-hmm.
She hates her husband, and I love that about her. She's like, yeah, that guy sucks. Everything you ask about him, she's like, ugh.
That putz.
Yeah, he probably did that because he sucks.
That fucking idiot.
But she's pretty cagey, and she's
so cagey all the time, even on stuff that does not matter.
Like her husband, but in a different way.
Yeah.
You can tell that her husband is someone that, like, just lies because that's just kind of who he is. Because he wants to believe that he's this, like, better, bigger version of himself, but everyone around him that knows him well is like, that guy sucks, including his dad. His dad is like, ugh, my garbage son.
Everyone hates Ryan.
Yeah, except Emma.
Yeah.
And Simon. But throughout the game, you kind of are painted with this picture of him as this like manipulative mastermind that's pulling the strings on all of these different puppets. And actually, he's just like this dude that could never learn guitar and like had the sports car that was vandalized because it sucked and he sucks, and like all of his business dealings fail because he sucks.
It's just a dumb little thing, but it made me laugh because like his vandalized car that they have pictures of is a friggin' Ferrari, and then you find his other current car and it's just an Audi. And it's like, that's still an expensive car, but that's like a couple steps down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's just like a pointless sequence where you steal his garage door remote and open up his garage so you can find his guitar collection that's just sitting in the garage, and then you ask people about it and they're like, he sucks.
Yeah. And like, it's a collection in the he has a guitar collection sense, not in the it's an actual, you can look at the screen and be like, oh, that's that collection. It's like an acoustic guitar and 2 electric guitars, and I think one of them's like a Fender Squire copy or something.
He's definitely that rich kid who never accomplished anything in his life and just constantly failed at things. And I don't remember if he like tried out to be in the local pub band and failed.
In the playthrough I watched, they didn't dig into it, but it sounded like it, which is like, if when he had tried out for that band, the one that the other people were talking about, he would have been like 15, 20 years older than everyone else in the band.
Yep. And it's the band that plays at his wife's pub. So he could have pulled some strings, but like, they're like, no, dude, you just suck too bad.
Well, it's the best part because, like, I don't know if Simon was in that band, but I know that one of the characters that isn't in the story that they mentioned, Liam, who is someone else who was in Atlas and ended up committing suicide, was in that band and in the program. So he could have just been like, let me in your band.
Yep. I actually really like Ryan because of that one specific choice to make him not just a cartoonish villain and just make him just a dude that sucks.
I think they saved all of the cartoonish supervillainy for his dad.
Because his dad is constantly disappointed in all of the terrible schemes that Ryan tries to like get into, because Ryan's like, okay, we're gonna have this course, but then we'll use occult symbols and we'll make them wear masks. And his dad's like, oh my fucking god, this child of mine.
Oh, man. And they treat having these kickback agreements with all of these multinational companies as like a big network. But it's almost a little unbelievable that they managed to get that kind of pull with more than one company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, considering their business thing hasn't been running that long, and the last one folded because it was just too fucking weird.
Because someone died, and then a local person put up flyers that said they do witchcraft and stuff, and then someone vandalized Ryan's car.
By spray painting devil worshippers on it.
Like, I would have gone with asshole, but that works too.
Yeah, we didn't really talk about how James, the local burnout who grows salvia and makes opium
tea. Yeah, apparently it's only briefly mentioned.
Yeah, like at the end, like there's a shady midnight delivery of poppy seed pods to his greenhouse, which he then like uses to make opium tea. This guy also, in his spare time, makes scrying mirrors to sell at the local farmer's market.
Mm-hmm. Handmade, locally sourced scrying mirrors for all your self-hypnosis needs.
I actually really like James because like every single one of the conversations you have with him is just like, he's on a level that Jenks cannot handle.
Yeah, he's just kind of a dick all the time in like the least shitty way possible.
Yeah, he's like, scrying mirror. I don't need a scrying mirror to scry. It's also, you could also think of it as auto-hypnosis. I could just scry looking at the clouds. And Jenks is like, what? What?
And I just really want to mention real quick, like, they make a big deal about salvia being a hallucinogenic drug, but also being technically illegal, but then nothing ever comes of making, you know, opium tea, which is kind of not legal.
Yeah, like, he is a terrible law enforcement person. Like, he's witnessed so many crimes and does jack shit about any of it.
Yeah, he got mugged, he's witnessed assaults and vandalism. He's just like, well, shit happens.
Which kind of reinforces my idea that, like, he's probably the fail son of some police commissioner or something, and he was just given this job as a way to get him out of the office to stop distracting all of the people doing real work.
Because he kept finding random things and walking up to people and going, what do you think of this?
Yeah, I just imagine him doing that at Scotland Yard and everyone being like, please send this guy somewhere far away. Please.
It really feels like he has like a sideline doing close-up magic on street corners.
Yeah.
It really is. Is this your card?
He 100% would do magic tricks on a Tinder date to try to impress someone.
Oh, man. I was like, that's how he presents a lot of the evidence, too. Like, he's revealing, the coin behind their ear or something.
Like, when he goes around showing the weird paper mask, he, like, holds it up to his face and is like, have you seen this here?
Does this mean anything to you? It's like, yeah, you're blocking the mic. That's what it means.
Oh, he's so weird. And I love that character because he's just so bizarre.
He's so fantastic. He's so fun to watch. And he's having so much fun. You can tell he's just going for it all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the, like, Lance Hendrickson, like, Nick Cage school of, like, if I'm going to go for it, I'm just fucking going to go for it.
And I swear there were a couple times when he was presenting the rock horns evidence where he actually looked like he was pulling it out of his jacket.
Yeah, everything about this is so wild.
Yeah.
The actual murder mystery itself is the least interesting part of this game.
Yeah, because you get into like some real sleazy crap, especially with Ryan's dad, Paul. Like, he was making inappropriate advances towards a lot of the female applicants to Atlas. And Ryan himself was like giving money to some of them too, for reasons.
Mm-hmm. It turns out it was like blackmail.
Yeah.
Ryan was stooping some of his students, and someone was blackmailing him to cover up the evidence. But that doesn't even end up being anything. Like, so spoilers, I guess. Let's just talk about the end.
Right. So you find out that Emma was having an affair with Ryan, and Emma and Kate had gotten to a fight because Kate had evidence of it and she was going to use it to blackmail Ryan. However, Rebecca, Ryan's wife, had overheard and decided to do something about it.
And it was kind of a crime of opportunity and a crime of passion, because she was like, this girl that sucks, who's always like causing trouble in my bar, is actually having sex with my husband. So I'm going to lure her out to the local woods, and then if she falls in the lake and drowns, oops. It's
like almost a CSI kind of twist, the CSI show, where she thought Kate was the one having the affair, but it was Emma. She misheard the argument. So, and then she's like, I didn't kill her. She fell in. All I did was push her head underwater with a branch. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah. She's like, she was dead anyway. She's dead anyway. Because all that floundering was just like, just rigor mortis setting in. I don't know.
Like, lady, you just went from manslaughter to murder one. Jeez.
Yeah. This entire trail of evidence was unraveled because,
tape.
Because of, like, fantastical, like, masking tape that was on the back of Kate's license that you found at the beginning of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And then also saw on the window, the broken window of Rebecca's bar.
The window that Rebecca used the tape to fix that was broken during Kate and Emma's argument about blackmail.
Yep. And when you look at it that way, you could have solved that in the first 2 minutes of the game, but it does not let you, because you have to walk through all of the entire revelations of everything in order to understand that that tape belonged to Ryan, and therefore it was incriminating somehow.
Yeah, it turns out that Kate was in the lead running to be prime candidate, and you sort of are kind of given to believe that Simon might have been jealous about that. Ryan told him to test her to see if she had what it takes, and that involved giving her a shitload of morphine and letting her wander around.
Everyone is kind of involved with her death, but not really.
Not as much as the lady who pushed her head underwater with the branch, I'd have to say.
Yeah, because Rebecca lured her out and then, like, drowned her. Basically, That's it. That's the end of the mystery. That's pretty much it. All that rigmarole about scrying mirrors and salvia and devil horns and masks.
Poppy pods and the band and satanic rituals. And the girl in the cloak who just shows up for one scene. We don't even find out who it is.
Yeah, it was just like one of those randos who was like burning dolls, and the mirror maze, and
the mirror maze,
the pickpocketing video, like the guitars, like none of it matters. It's all just tape.
I don't think we mentioned it, but we said it just contained crime, but the not porn DVD was a video of someone taking wallets out of some coats from a POV perspective, and that's it, like 10, 15 seconds of footage.
Yeah, it's like poor man's Strange Days.
Yeah, which they explain away, or they don't explain away, but it is revealed to be like a part of the Atlas training program, which makes not a ton of sense, but it doesn't need to.
I understand why all of the Atlas stuff is doing what it does, and in some way, I am sympathetic to the idea of getting rid of excessive self-doubt. Excessive, like, self-censorship, unwanted guilt. But then they push past normal human, like, levels of self-acceptance to weird sociopathic megalomania.
Yeah, they go past don't get hung up on blaming yourself for everything to you are a blameless holy creature who can do no wrong and will fill the world with your divine brilliance.
Which, again, seemed cartoonish when this came out in 2015. But these days feels a little too on the nose.
Yeah. It was like a cartoonish overreach, and then in the span of a couple of years became cartoonish underreach.
Yeah, there are some hilarious parts where Paul Rand is comparing people to, like, Nazis and the Third Reich, and you're like, a little too close to home. Wrong targets. But yeah, this is a wild game. I even after everything we've said and after everything that we've spoiled, if you've never played this,
do it.
You deserve to treat yourself to watching a playthrough at the very least.
Yeah. Support a creator you like. Watch it. Play it if you can, if you're able to afford it. I wish I had money. I saw a recommendation from the creator that the best way to play it is with one person on the controller and a room full of friends, and that sounds like an amazing time.
I have been playing through this with my partner, and it is such a wonderful experience to take other people through it. There are some frustrating bits, of course, like constant backtracking, constantly trying out similar statements to point out contradictions, and you're like, wait a minute, no, this one says they don't use drugs, and then this one says they don't use drugs very often, and they're close enough that, like, and then sometimes
they could have been both, but the game only wanted one of those to be the contradiction. There's a lot of times when there seemed like something should have logically been a contradiction, but it's not the one the game wanted, and that can be a little frustrating.
Yeah, but overall, worth playing.
Worth experiencing, honestly, 1000%.
Yeah, I really want to see Jenks in a future thing, so
I want him in more stuff. I want him to be investigating an actual murder so he can pull out the murder weapon. Like, what does this mean to you? And it's like a bloody screwdriver or something.
Yeah. There is like a couple parts where people are like, Jenks, that object, is that evidence? And he's like, yes. And they're like, shouldn't that be in an evidence bag? And he's like, I didn't have one.
Fresh out.
Fresh out. And they're like, your DNA is all over that, so it's not admissible anymore. He's like,
My favorite one along those lines, but not quite that, is you find a keychain of Simon's. It's like a little coin medallion thing, and you keep handing it to people, and especially Simon just hands it right back. But it's his.
It's his, and it was a gift from his girlfriend or partner or whatever.
Yeah.
It's so weird. It's so weird. This game, more than anything else, like exemplifies the ethos of what we are looking for in this podcast.
They just make bananas choices and go for it and have a ton of fun doing it. At least for me in particular, I try to find stuff that I can recommend to people to go experience and do, and not just, to find something to make fun of.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been getting some feedback that it sounds like that we're ripping into stuff that we did actually like. But I got to say, just listen until the end. If we recommend it, then it's definitely something you should check out.
Yeah, that's one thing that I guess for me, I don't make super clear is I criticize things because I like them and I could see potential that's kind of left on the table. But fundamentally, there are very few things that we've talked about on this show that are not worth your time. If they weren't worth your time for some reason or another, we probably wouldn't talk about them.
Yeah, Warrior and the Sorceress in particular was definitely like the lower limit of what we're willing to put up with.
Yeah, that wasn't a great one.
Mm-mm.
But everything else is pretty good. And yeah, like Contradiction is $10 on Steam. If you can afford it, definitely check it out.
Yeah, get some friends on a Discord call or a Zoom call and just sit around and watch this guy and his fantastic hat solve a mystery.
I think I'm actually going to do that tonight with my partner. We're going to finish it up, where I think we're on like 10 or 11 p.m. So we're very close to the end.
Nice. Well, that was Contradiction Spot the Liar. Kate, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on TikTok and Twitter as Army of Meat. And where can people find you, Sky?
You can find me on Twitter at shard_corso, SHARD_CORSO. If you have any suggestions for stuff we should cover on the podcast, you can drop them on our Twitter at interestingchoice6, at INTRESTINGCHOI6. If you want to support the show, you can also look us up on Patreon at Interesting Choices. You can find the show on Spreaker-shows/Interesting Choices, or just search for us on your podcast service of choice. Until next week, thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.